Hello everyone, it's Kari for Heffy Doodle, and today I'm going to share with you two fun and interesting background ideas for these cards using this brand new stamp set called Let's Hang Out. This has a lot of adorable little critters. There's some bats, spiders, spider webs, and all kinds of adorable sentiments. And so I'm going to use this stamp set exclusively. I also am going to be using the Elm Street dies. And look at all these great dies. This one actually cuts out the lights to go behind the windows in that haunted house. But I'm just going to be using the frame today and that spooky tree. I'm going to show you a fun way to use that tree to make it look even more full. And so let's go ahead and get started. I'm just kind of laying out my ideas for how I want this to go. And I've cut out a mask so that I can make a small little moon in the top section of this panel. I'm starting with some distressed oxide inks. This one is Twisted Citron. And once I'm done with that, I'm going to go ahead and add some peacock feathers. I decided to put a piece of scratch paper underneath so as not to get my surface too inky today. I'm using also a domed blender tool here to get all of this on, and this is going to ink up perfectly. Now for my new favorite color. This is Uncharted Mariner, and it's a gorgeous peacock blue color, and I'm slowly putting that ink on there. I'm going to blend this out and just keep working it until I get the colors that I'm looking for. I did put a piece of Heffy tape underneath my fingers there just to hold it so that I wouldn't get my fingerprints all over this ink. One of the wonderful things about the oxide inks is that you can continue to blend and blend and blend until you get the look that you want. So I'm going over it again and again until those colors blend nicely together, and then I'm going to finish it off with some black soot. That's going to add the darkness that I'm looking for, a little bit of spooky feeling to this card. And there is our first background panel. Some easy oxide ink blending will do the trick. And now it's time to add the magic. And I'm going to use this outline die or the frame die from the Elm Street dies and cut it out. And I'm also cutting out 2 extra pieces of white. For the tree, I've cut out 2 trees and I've turned them opposite directions. So we're going to build that tree up to be even more amazing than it is. And I'm going to show you how in just a minute. But first I want to stamp out those little bats. And I'm using the inside piece of the white cardstock that we just cut that frame out with. I didn't want that white cardstock to go to waste. So it's perfect for stamping out these little critters and coloring them in. So we've got that, and I'm going to start Copic coloring these. I've got some R81, and then I'm going to blend that through with the E53 color. I'm going to bring in some darker browns now. The E79 is going to be my darkest color, and I will just add that to all the darkest spots on this little bat here. I'm just going to show you the coloring of this first bat, and then I'll show you them all finished together. I also colored the spiders the exact same way, so you'll see that in our second card. I've also got E57 and E55, and I'm just going to blend those through until I get the shading that I want. Now this is a little bit light, so I'm going to go in a little darker in just a minute with more of that E79 and the E57, and then I'll blend it through with the E55 and the E53. So you can see that I'm just building those colors up to get this bat just the right shade of brown. And this is reminding me that when I used to live a little further in the desert, I actually had a bat that got stuck between my screen door and my sliding glass door. Like it was right in between. So if I opened my glass door, he could fly inside. And so I did not like that. I called my neighbor because my husband was at work. I called my neighbor, who is probably the bravest lady that I know, and she came and coaxed that bat right out. and until he flew away. And I stayed inside screaming the entire time. So bats in real life are not exactly my friends, but this one is super cute, and I do like creating them on a card. And look how cute these two bats turned out. I love that there are coordinating dies for this set, so I went ahead and cut those bats out with the coordinating dies, and now it's time to put this entire card together. I'm going to glue together those frame pieces just like so, and then we'll attach it to the card base like that. And then this piece, let's reveal that moon. To cut down on the stark white, I'm just going to add a little more of the Twisted Citron color. I'm not re-inking my sponge, I am just adding just a little bit there. And this is kind of how our scene is going to play out. Just like that. So let's go ahead and add those together. I should have probably stamped the sentiment first, but I was so excited to get this together that I put it together, and I'll show you the trick that I used to make sure I got a nice stamped sentiment. So I glued all of those frame pieces together. So this is going to pop them up, make it a little more dimensional. And now I'll add that to the card base just like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and glue in the center portion as well. And this is going to just kind of drop right in just like so. I made it a little easier by using my bone folder to get that in all the way just like this. And then we have a really interesting background, just inking up some oxides. Now here's where I'm going to add the tree. I'm going to glue down that back tree, and this tree is actually turned backwards from the normal way that it would be. So I put that on just like so, and then for the top piece, I'm going to add some Heffy foam tape, Heffy Doodle foam tape. This is the double thickness foam tape. I love it so much. It's really going to add some dimension, and look at how spooky that tree looks. So I'm going to glue the bottom part down to the frame and then add the top part with the foam tape so it pops right up. And now I can add that little bat with some foam tape as well. He's hanging upside down to that tree. Now here's where I decided I better add that sentiment. So I'm going to stamp on the sentiment that says "Let's hang out." To make sure I get this stamped perfectly, I put it in my MISTI, because remember, this is already attached to the card base and everything. That frame is already popped up. But when you put it in the MISTI and just press a little bit harder, look at this, we get a perfect impression. So even if you already put your card together, there are ways. Now I decided to leave it in the MISTI because in this stamp set there is one little tiny bat stamp, and I thought it would be perfect for the background on this panel to have some of those bats just flying around kind of back in the background. So I'm going to stamp some of those on with the MISTI as well, making sure I get a nice good impression. And I just moved them around a couple of times and stamped them in some black ink. And there's our first card. How cute is this with all those bats? I love that sentiment, "Let's hang out." For this second card, I've already put some glitter, black glitter gel on the background, which is some purple cardstock, and I've used the Notre Dame stencil from Heffy Doodle. I did that ahead of time so it would have time to dry. And for the background, I'm going to be using this Dura Bright cardstock. It's kind of like a plastic paper, more like a Yupo paper, but this is my favorite to work with right now. And I'm using this hair tool with the cool setting only to kind of blow around that alcohol ink. And I also put on some 91% isopropyl alcohol. This creates some really neat looks with the alcohol ink, and so that's why I'm kind of obsessed. And I thought it would make just a beautiful background using those new beautiful window dies from Heffy Doodle, and I'll show you those in just a few minutes. The colors of alcohol ink I'm using today are Purple Twilight, Boysenberry, and then I'm going to add a little bit of the Cloud Blue also, just for some interest and some differences in color. This cloud blue is a lot lighter, so I added a little more of that. And I'm just going to keep adding and adding more isopropyl alcohol until I get the look that I want. Now I could go on and play with alcohol inks for hours, but I am trying to just get this done very quickly to show you how cool this looks behind that cathedral window die. So as I'm finishing up with the last color here, I'm going to test it out with the window dies and kind of see where I think this would look the best. That's one of the reasons I like doing the alcohol ink on a larger panel, because I can choose my favorite area. So what I did, here's the finished product. I'm going to cut this down to fit perfectly on a card base, and there I've already cut out the cathedral window dies out of that panel that I used the glitter paste on. Now I have some Heffy Doodle foam tape on this already. You could easily turn this into a shaker card if you wanted to, but today I'm just leaving it with the alcohol inks and this window die popped up. I've stamped on the spider web from that stamp set and the sentiment that says, "Hang in there, friend." And I've also stamped and colored 2 of those spiders from the stamp set. And now I'm just going to pop those up with some foam tape very easily like this, and I'll glue down the top of that spider that he's hanging kind of from one of his webs there. And look at how fun this background is with that die, with these spiders. I love these sentiments as well. I'm going to go ahead and glue that to our card panel now, the card base. I'm using a 110-pound card base, so it's nice, heavy weight. And I'll put some acrylic blocks over the top while this dries. And look at the beautiful card we get. You can kind of see that glitter in that glitter gel there on the purple cardstock. That alcohol ink background just shines as those spiders kind of run all over that background. Oh boy, these little hairy spiders. And here's the first card that we made as well with that spooky tree popped up. I hope you got some inspiration from these background ideas using some inks, different kinds of inks, oxides and alcohol inks. They were very easy to create, and look at how darling these cards turned out. Just using that one stamp set, hang in there. There are so many images you can use, lots of different scenes you can build. I'll be back soon with more card making inspiration. Until then, be sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.